We'll be here for a little while longer. Joining me, Mariana Mancuso. Mariana is an interesting story, and I got an email from her, and I told her I wasn't going to hold it against you that you worked for Connie Mack.
Right, and I appreciate that.
You and now you're being written about as an up-and-coming conservative, what? Fill in the blank.
Up-and-coming conservative, I guess, operative.
Okay.
Strategist, that's what I do.
Operative. I like that word.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. I was intrigued to meet you for one reason. You're not 70 years old. And the fact of the matter is, look, I speak at Florida State University 2 or 3 times a year, and I speak to the college Republicans, all right? And it's refreshing to see some conservative thinking young people. Mm-hmm. But you, as you well know, are an anomaly.
Absolutely, and that's kind of why I'm out doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to give the Republican Party in Florida a facelift. Okay,
now, I've told people that in my family tree, liberal to the core, just so you know, aunt, national president of the National Organization for Women. My aunt co-authored Title IX. I mean, that's so how liberal, amazing. Conservative, liberal, and out of that, I become a conservative. That proves there is a God in my mind. For you, how do you, at your age, how do you, from New York,
yes.
Is it God? Or how do you become a conservative, Mariana?
I think it is. You know, my family was extremely conservative. Growing up, my mother was conservative. My father was conservative. My father's a job creator. He owns his own business.
That's not allowed in New York.
It's what we do.
You survived it anyway.
I did.
Living in New York.
I did. I went to school in Rochester, New York, and I did my graduate work in Brooklyn, New York.
But there's always a transition. And in politics, much like religion, because for many politics is a religion, there's a transition from what you've been taught to believe, what you were raised to believe, and what you believe.
Right.
When did that happen for you?
You know, I think that really took place in college. I went to college, and I was in the student government, and I was surrounded by people that were extremely liberal-minded, and I was listening to their point of view, and I was realizing that the things that they wanted were not necessarily what I believed in. The conservative values I really longed for, which is, you know, fiscal conservatism. We want to know that our families are important, and we want people to work hard for what they have. We don't want just handouts. And that, to me, really took shape within the student government. You know, I was the treasurer, and at 22, I was balancing a $1.6 million budget. And I knew I had to be conservative. I couldn't just give handouts to every club and organization that wanted the money.
What's interesting is if you take real-life examples, and one of the classic ones for young people is to talk to them about grades. You know, that we're going to take the highest-achieving students, we're going to take some points from them and give them to everybody else. That, you know, we've all heard those examples,
exactly.
All right? Is that the key to this? Because your expertise is to try and take conservatism and, I guess, dragging along, kicking and screaming the Republican Party into an era of relative relevance. Mm-hmm. Because right now, the Republican Party, they don't know it. They're irrelevant.
I think that the Republican Party is suffering an identity crisis. They're in a space where the gap between their constituents and party members is widening with each election cycle. And what I do with online strategy is I use social media as a vehicle to target voters, to get the issues out to the younger voters. And I'm not talking younger necessarily in your 20s. I mean, I want to reach the constituents 35, 40. The average age on Facebook is 55. Those are the people. Yeah.
No.
I swear. Yeah.
See, I knew that because I do our Facebook
That could
page.
make me jump off. That could make me jump off a building. That many old people on Facebook?
Yes.
And so you're trying to reach the younger than the median age?
Yes, and that's effective through not only Facebook, but as well as Twitter. The average age on Twitter is 33.
I knew that, too.
Well, okay, so we've established in the last couple minutes that you know two things. Good. All right. Now, what's the key to this then? Because in my mind, the problem that the Republican Party has moved into, besides being irrelevant, is it looks not a lot different than the Democratic Party. They've wandered away from their convictions, and that's what separates them. I've maintained you have to win hearts and minds. Elections take care of themselves. The party's been trying to win elections and not win hearts and minds.
Well, and I think that's a very valid point that you bring up. One of the biggest things that I hear is that people are telling me that I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me.
I've heard that multiple times.
And I think that it's time that the Republican Party get back on track, and we
But
bring
does the
people in.
Republican Party want to get on track? My biggest concern, Mariana, is that it's about control, and they're not really so much interested in convictions and issues of right and wrong as they are of just being in charge.
You know, I think they do want to get back in control. I think that they're fumbling. They're not really sure where to go and what's next. And the problem is that the people that are heading the Republican Party are, you know, reaching a retirement age, and they're looking for someone to hand the baton, and no one is stepping up. You know, we have a generation now that is becoming apathetic, that they don't want to work, that they want everything to be handed to them. And at the end of the day, somebody like myself is willing to step up and save the party, and I don't care if I have to boots on the ground through the entire state of Florida. I'm going to do what it takes to make sure that the GOP does what they need in 2014 and 2016.
15 minutes away from 9 o'clock, I'm with Mariana Mancuso. She has described herself as a conservative operative. Let's check weather from the Weather Channel. You got a few more minutes to get by the Bradfordville Dunkin' Donuts and register for free stuff. In honor of the President of the United States, we give away free stuff wherever we can. And Dunkin' Donuts has cooperated by providing lots of free stuff right there. We've got a sample of things that are being given away. So register to win. We're not going to pester you. Will's not going to pester you. It's going to be very harmless and simple. So just a few more minutes, though, because we're going to start pulling names in just a little while. Mariana Mancuso with me, conservative operative. Okay, so what's the key here? I think it's long game. I think the GOP has to accept that this could be some lean times and hope that we have a country left when we get our act together. Do you agree?
God willing. You know, I think that the real goal here is for them to come in with the times and actually change. They've been so resistant to change, and I really don't like to throw that word around loosely. I think
What, resistant?
the word change.
Oh, I know. I'm just teasing.
I think that we saw in 2008 Barack Obama use social media as a vehicle for his presidential election, and the Republicans were kind of caught off guard. That's okay. They had 4 years to get it together. They missed the boat again. They did everything they possibly could, but still it wasn't enough to close that gap. And I think that as we look to 2014 and we look into 2016, we really need to be okay with change. We need to be okay with jumping in social media head first and being able to target voters to talk about, you know, the topics and the issues that they're concerned with. And one of the biggest things that I'm doing in Florida is I'm going around and speaking with the REC chairman, speaking with college students at the college GOP level, and saying, hey guys, it's important to not only be conservative, but to let your voices be heard, because we're getting trounced time and again in each election as the Democrats continue to put people up that are really not candidate worthy.
Do Republicans need to just ditch the party and start all over? Because right now the branding is so bad that I'm not sure that they can turn public opinion.
I think they need an overhaul, and I think that's going to come with time, but they need to get it together, and they need to get it together soon. I had a meeting with someone, and they were talking about how the Republicans are now analyzing the 2012 election, and they want to know what went wrong. And in the middle of the meeting, I stopped the guy, and I said, it's not time to sit around and analyze the paperwork. It's time to get some action together, and we need to do something, because anyone can read the analytics. We can always look in the rearview mirror to see, oh gosh, that election we lost. It's time to start doing things, and I think that's where the Republicans are missing up. They're not really sure what to do next, and they're too busy consulting everyone and reading white papers to figure it out and really do it.
I think we've given in on the school campuses. I think, and that's what the libs have done so successfully, is they've invaded the minds of our young people, and they've taken over our college campuses. They've infiltrated to a large extent our high school campuses. And I think we have to get real practical and say, this is going to be a long, drawn-out process to turn this boat around. It's akin to a large ship with a small rudder. We got to get a bigger rudder.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is the Republicans want the instant fix. We can't have an instant fix.
Well, there isn't one.
Right, exactly. We need to find something else. We need to be in it for the long haul, like you said. And if we start now, then you know what? We'll have that shot.
Are you confident that if the argument is made properly, and I stress that because I can probably list on one hand the number of conservatives that I think can make the argument well, that can win hearts and minds through the manner of persuasive speech and presenting the ideas based on heartfelt conviction. Can you win the argument? Can you do it?
I think you can, but I think you have to go where the people are.
Is that social media?
That is. That is.
Yeah.
We've found through our Facebook page that and through our Twitter is the engagement process, not just putting something on there. And I think the Republicans shot themselves in the foot by posting what they thought instead of saying, what do you think?
That's exactly where they went wrong. They were too busy throwing commentary at people instead of asking them to engage. And that's actually what President Obama did right, is that he allowed the engagement process. He allowed the conversation to continue. The Republicans aren't doing that. They're putting things on social media merely to check a box. And that's not gonna fix anything.
But what if? See, I don't necessarily agree with that. Because sadly, I mean, we got half the country that's just fine getting handed stuff. I mean, look, this election was a referendum on keep the checks coming from the federal government. That's what this was. And I'm not certain that that conservatives are going to hear what they want to hear if they ask, unless they're willing to just cave on their principles.
You know, I don't know if that was this election. We had 3 million people that did not show up to vote. That, to me, shows me that they didn't have a candidate worth voting for.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
And I would further that by saying because they were not engaged by the Republican Party to say, okay, guys, we dropped the ball in 08. What do you want us to do as your party representative when we get to Washington to change this instead of just sticking to the old marching orders of the Republican Party? Here's what we're going to do. Well, you know what? What you've done for the last 70 years doesn't work. You've been in control. You've kept us in debt. You've never shrunk the size of government. You're not listening to us as conservatives.
Biggest enemy of the Republican Party is the Republican Party.
I was just saying that last night, actually, in a dinner meeting. I was saying that they are their own worst enemy.
So, how do people follow what you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter, at Mancuso.
Figured you'd say that.
Exactly.
You know, people do Twitter. I don't know if you know that, Will. Go ahead.
You can follow me on Twitter, or you can check out my website, politicalhype.com.
Politicalhype.com.
Yes.
And we will link to it on our Facebook later today.
Yeah, good for you.
Thank you, Will.
Mariana Mancuso, good to meet you. Thanks for coming in this
Likewise.
morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, 51.